I stood in my mother's kitchen, balancing a plate of homemade gingerbread cookies while adjusting my reindeer sweater. The holiday party buzzed around me, relatives and neighbors mingling with eggnog. "I can't wait for the family reunion tomorrow," I said cheerfully to my cousin. "I made extra cookies for it." My mother froze mid-conversation across the room. She slowly turned, her face ashen. "Oh, that was yesterday," she said flatly. The room fell silent. Then I overheard Uncle Paul murmur to my brother Brian, "Wasn't that venue paid for with Leslie's money?" My fingers went numb. The cookies tumbled to the floor. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity as I stared at my mother, Janet, waiting for her to laugh, to say it was all a terrible joke. But her eyes, which never quite met mine, told me everything. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. "What do you mean it was yesterday?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Around us, conversations awkwardly resumed, but everyone was listening. I could feel it. "We had it at the Lakeside Events Center," my brother Brian said too quickly. "It was just a small gathering, nothing special." I'd always been the responsible one in our family. After Dad died of a heart attack when I was 18, I put myself through college, working 2 jobs while earning my finance degree. Meanwhile, Brian, 2 years younger, had drifted from one failed venture to another, and my sister Amy had married young and struggled with 3 kids and a part-time retail job. "Nothing special?" I repeated. "Then why wasn't I invited?" My mother busied herself with straightening napkins. "You're always so busy, Leslie. And honestly, you're always so judgmental about money. We wanted to just enjoy ourselves without your comments." The words stung like a physical slap. I'd built a good career as a financial advisor, true, but only through hard work and discipline. Things I'd tried to instill in my siblings when they came asking for help, which was frequently. "Speaking of money," I said slowly, "Brian, didn't I loan you $5,000 3 months ago for your business? For inventory, you said?" Brian suddenly became very interested in his drink. "Yeah, but the business is still struggling. I'll pay you back soon." Mrs. Henderson, our old neighbor, chose that unfortunate moment to approach. "Janet, that venue yesterday was just gorgeous. Must have cost a fortune. Worth every penny for such a special day. The whole family together." My mother shot her a warning look, but the damage was done. "The whole family?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, and there it was. Dozens of photos tagged number Williams Family Reunion from just yesterday. My cousins from Seattle whom I hadn't seen in years. My aunt and uncle from Florida. Everyone smiling, hugging, posing in a beautifully decorated banquet room with catered food and an open bar. And there was Brian, raising a toast. "To family, the most important thing in life." I scrolled through more photos, each one a fresh knife to my heart. Amy's kids opening presents. My mother beaming in a new dress I'd never seen. Everyone I loved in one room, deliberately without me. The final photo stopped my scrolling cold. The event center's grand entrance, with an elegant banner hanging above. Williams Family Reunion, 2025, with sponsored by Brian Williams Enterprises in smaller letters below. He had used my money. My $5,000 that I'd given him when he'd called me, desperate, saying his business was about to fold without emergency capital. And he'd used it to throw a family party that I wasn't even invited to. "You used my money to pay for this," I said, turning to Brian. "It wasn't a question." "Not all of it," Brian said defensively. "Just the deposit." "Leslie, don't make a scene," my mother hissed. "It's Christmas." I looked around the room at familiar faces suddenly seeming like strangers. These people knew. They had all been there. They had eaten and drunk and celebrated on my dime, never once questioning why I wasn't there. "I have to go," I said, gathering my purse, leaving the fallen cookies where they lay. As I headed for the door, I heard my cousin Greg's wife whisper, "Well, She is always bragging about her success. Maybe they just wanted one day without her making everyone feel small. I had never, not once, intentionally made anyone feel small about their financial choices. I had only ever tried to help, to advise, when asked, to support. The final twist of the knife came as I was starting my car. A notification popped up on my phone. Amy had tagged me in a photo from yesterday. I opened it with trembling fingers. The entire extended Williams family, 36 people according to the caption, posed in a massive group shot. Number family complete was the hashtag. Complete, without me. The drive home was a blur. Streetlights smeared into streaks through my tears as I navigated the familiar roads to my condo. Christmas decorations that had seemed charming just hours earlier now seemed to mock me with their forced cheer. I pulled into my parking space and sat there, engine off, unable to summon the energy to move. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages I couldn't bear to read. Instead, my mind drifted back to childhood memories I'd long suppressed. My 10th birthday, when my mother had forgotten to order the cake I'd been talking about for weeks. "You're too practical for something so frivolous," she had said when I cried. Meanwhile, Brian's birthdays were always celebrated with fanfare. Or the high school graduation party that somehow became all about Amy's pregnancy announcement. "Leslie doesn't need the attention," my mother had said. "She has her accomplishments." Pattern after pattern revealed itself in stark clarity. The family had always treated me differently. I wasn't the golden child like Brian, nor the one who needed extra help like Amy. I was just convenient, reliable Leslie, the one who would understand if plans changed, the one who wouldn't mind if her feelings were overlooked because she was so independent, the one they could rely on for financial support, but not include in their emotional circle. My phone rang, cutting through my painful reverie. Taylor. My best friend since college, and the one person who had always seen me clearly. "Hey, how was the party?" she asked cheerfully. I tried to respond normally, but all that came out was a choked sob. "I'm coming over," Taylor said immediately. 20 minutes. Don't move." True to her word, Taylor arrived bearing hot chocolate and a sympathetic ear. I poured out everything as we sat on my sofa, the Christmas tree I'd so carefully decorated twinkling in the corner. "Those absolute jerks," Taylor said when I'd finished. "I'm so sorry, Leslie. I just don't understand how they could do this. Use my money to throw a party I wasn't even invited to? Who does that?" "People who take advantage of your generosity," Taylor said firmly. "This isn't the first time they've used you, is it?" I sighed, thinking about the countless loans over the years. The down payment for Amy's house. The startup capital for 3 of Brian's failed businesses. The renovations for my mother's kitchen. None of it ever repaid. All of it accompanied by vague promises. "I should check something," I said, opening my laptop. As I feared, more photos had been posted online. The reunion hadn't just been a family gathering. There had been expensive party favors, custom t-shirts, even what looked like commemorative watches for the men and jewelry for the women. "Is that a Tiffany box?" Taylor asked, peering at one photo. It was. I recognized the distinctive blue. Brian had apparently given our mother a Tiffany bracelet as a family reunion gift, a bracelet that had almost certainly been purchased with my money. My phone buzzed again. "Brian." I put it on speaker so Taylor could hear. "Leslie, you left so suddenly," he said, his voice artificially concerned. "Mom's upset." "Did you use the money I loaned you to pay for the family reunion?" I asked directly. A pause. "Not all of it, but some of it. The family needed something nice for once," Brian said, his voice hardening. "You wouldn't have approved of the expense if we'd told you beforehand. So you just decided to not invite me instead? To an event partially funded by my money? You always make everyone feel bad about spending," Brian countered, "always lecturing about savings and investments. We wanted one day without the Financial Advisor Act." I ended the call, too hurt to argue further. "Call your sister," Taylor suggested. "Amy might be more straight with you." I doubted it, but I called anyway. Amy answered on the fourth ring, sounding wary. I need to understand what happened, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Amy sighed heavily. It wasn't personal, Leslie. How is excluding me from a family reunion not personal? There was a long pause before Amy spoke again, her voice quiet. You've done well for yourself. You have this perfect life with your perfect job and your perfect condo. Do you know how that makes the rest of us feel? Like failures. Brian's businesses keep tanking. My husband got laid off again. Mom's retirement fund is basically non-existent. So this was punishment for doing well? It wasn't punishment, Amy insisted. It was just. We wanted to enjoy ourselves without feeling judged. And yes, Brian suggested using some of your loan to fund it. He said you owed the family that much for always making us feel small. I have never judged any of you, I said, my voice breaking. I've only ever tried to help, by pointing out our mistakes, by trying to teach us to be more like you, perfect Leslie. After I hung up, Taylor wrapped an arm around my shoulders. There's something else going on here. This level of resentment doesn't make sense. I nodded slowly, then remembered something. I had 2 email addresses, my personal one and my work one. Sometimes family members would accidentally send things to my work email. I logged in and searched for emails from my family, and there it was. An email thread from 6 weeks ago accidentally copied to my work address. My mother writing to various family members about the reunion plans. We should keep this separate from Leslie, she had written. She'll just question every expense and make Brian feel bad about his contribution. Let's give ourselves this gift of a day without her financial oversight. Everyone agrees it's for the best. Responses had poured in, most agreeing readily. A few expressing mild concern about excluding me. But no one had stood up and said, "This is wrong." No one had insisted I be included. "Oh, Leslie," Taylor whispered, reading over my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." I closed my laptop, feeling suddenly exhausted. "I've given them everything," I said. "Money, support, advice. And this is how they repay me." "The question is," Taylor said gently, "what are you going to do about it?" I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Monday morning came too quickly. I dragged myself into the office, sleep-deprived and emotionally drained. The financial planning firm where I worked as a senior advisor was decorated for the holidays. But I barely noticed the festive touches. "Leslie, we need your final revisions on the Preston portfolio by noon," my assistant reminded me as I passed her desk. I nodded mechanically, trying to focus on work rather than the churning emotions threatening to overwhelm me. The Preston account was significant, a multi-million-dollar family portfolio that could lead to a partnership track if I handled it well. I had been working on it for months. As I stared at my computer screen, the numbers blurred together. All I could see were those Instagram photos, my family celebrating without me, using my money to fund their betrayal. "You look like hell," a voice said from my doorway. I looked up to see Jack, the firm's managing partner, leaning against my door frame. In his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and keen eyes that missed nothing, Jack had been my mentor since I'd joined the firm 7 years ago. "Just tired," I lied. "Try again," Jack said, closing my office door and sitting down. "I know tired. This is something else." Maybe it was his tone, or maybe I was just too exhausted to maintain the facade, but I found myself telling him everything. The family reunion, the stolen money, the years of being used while being excluded. Jack listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful. "My family did something similar," he said when I finished. "Not exactly the same, but my brother used my investments to build his business, then cut me out of any profits. Said I was just the money guy and didn't deserve a share of the success." "What did you do?" I asked. "I let it destroy me for a while," Jack admitted. "Affected my work, my relationships, everything. Then I realized I was giving him power over my life that he hadn't earned." How do you stop feeling betrayed by the people who are supposed to love you the most? Jack's expression softened. You don't, but you stop letting that betrayal define you, and you establish boundaries that protect you from future hurt. I nodded, grateful for his understanding, but still feeling lost. Take the day if you need it, Jack offered. The Preston presentation isn't until Friday. No, I said firmly. I need to work. It helps me think. Jack nodded approvingly. Just remember, family issues have a way of bleeding into everything if you don't address them. Don't let them impact your career, too. Unfortunately, his warning proved prophetic. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't focus. The Preston portfolio needed detailed analysis, but my mind kept drifting to calculations of a different sort, mentally tallying all the money I'd given my family over the years. By Wednesday, I was seriously behind schedule. To make matters worse, Megan, another advisor, who had always viewed me as competition, seemed to sense my vulnerability. I heard the Preston meeting might be reassigned, she mentioned casually as we waited for coffee in the break room. Jack's concerned about your focus lately. That's not true, I said, but doubt crept in. Jack had been checking in on me more frequently than usual. That afternoon, my phone rang. My mother. Leslie, we need to talk about Brian, she began without preamble. I'm at work, Mom. This is important. Brian's business is having cash flow problems again. He needs another loan, just until after the new year. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 silently. How much? 7,000. It's an emergency. The audacity was breathtaking. After what they'd done, they were asking for more money? I can't help, I said firmly. Leslie, my mother's voice took on the disappointed tone I knew so well. Family helps family. You know that. Does family exclude family from reunions? Does family use loans for parties instead of business? That's not fair. Brian needed to boost his business image with that sponsorship. It was a marketing expense. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. I need to go. I have a meeting. After hanging up, I sat staring at my computer, a realization dawning. I needed to know exactly how much money I'd given my family over the years. I pulled up my bank statements, credit card records, and financial software. The next morning, I met with Susan, a financial advisor colleague who specialized in family wealth management. Based on what you've shown me, Susan said after reviewing my records, you've given your family over $50,000 in the past 5 years alone. None of it formally documented as loans, and none repaid. The number shocked me. $50,000. I could have bought a rental property as an investment. I could have significantly boosted my retirement savings. Instead, I'd poured it into a family that didn't even want me at their reunion. As I left Susan's office, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Leslie, it's Diane, a family friend. I thought you should know Brian's been telling everyone for years that you're too selfish and busy to attend family functions. That you think you're better than everyone. I never believed it, but others have. Thought you deserved to know the truth. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at my phone. Brian hadn't just excluded me. He'd actively turned the family against me with lies. The Preston presentation on Friday was a disaster. I fumbled key points, mixed up numbers, and couldn't answer basic questions from the clients. Jack had to step in and save the meeting. My office. Now, he said afterward, his expression grave. I followed him, expecting to be reprimanded or worse. You're one of my best advisors, Jack began once we were seated. But whatever's happening with your family is destroying your focus. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Fix it. Jack leaned forward. Take next week off. Deal with this family situation once and for all. Then come back ready to work. I nodded, knowing he was right. This couldn't continue. And Leslie? Remember what I said about boundaries. They're not just important in business. They're essential in family, too. As I packed up my things, I realized Jack had given me more than time off. He'd given me permission to stand up for myself. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. I gathered financial records, documented every loan, every gift, every expense I'd covered for my family. The total was even higher than Susan had estimated, closer to $70,000 over the past decade. I arranged to meet my mother, Brian, and Amy at my mother's house on Tuesday morning. I arrived early, setting up my laptop and documents at the dining room table. This would be a business meeting, not a family chat. They arrived together, already a united front. My mother looked nervous, Brian defiant, and Amy wouldn't meet my eyes. "What's all this?" Brian asked, gesturing to my paperwork. "Documentation," I replied. "Please, sit down." They exchanged glances but complied. "I've been supporting this family financially for 10 years, I began. Since Dad died, I've paid for emergency medical bills, home repairs, car payments, business investments, and countless other expenses. I've never asked for repayment, never charged interest, never set conditions. If you're keeping score," Brian interrupted, "that's pretty petty." "I wasn't keeping score until now," I said evenly. "But the family reunion changed things. You used money I loaned you for your business to fund a family event that I was deliberately excluded from. That crossed a line." "We've been over this," my mother sighed. "You make people uncomfortable with your financial success. We wanted one day without feeling judged." "I have never judged any of you," I said firmly. "I've only tried to help." "Help that comes with lectures," Amy muttered. "When have I ever lectured you?" I demanded. "When have I ever made you feel bad about needing help?" Silence fell, as they struggled to come up with specific examples. "The fact is," I continued, "I've been used as this family's bank while being excluded from its emotional bonds. That ends today." I slid folders across the table to each of them. "These contain documentation of every dollar I've given each of you. I'm not asking for immediate repayment, but I am asking for acknowledgement. I want formal loan agreements for the outstanding amounts, and I want honest answers about why I was excluded from the reunion." Brian scoffed. "You're seriously treating your family like clients now, with contracts?" "I'm treating this situation with the respect it deserves," I countered. "Something you didn't do when you misused my loan." "You owe this family," my mother said suddenly, her voice cold. "Your father and I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities. Your success comes from our sacrifices." The statement was so fundamentally untrue that I was momentarily speechless. My father had loved me, yes, but he'd died when I was barely an adult. And my mother had always favored my siblings, giving them emotional support while expecting me to be strong. "I put myself through college," I said quietly. "I worked 2 jobs while studying. I built my career through hard work and discipline. I don't owe anyone for that." "There she goes again," Brian said to Amy. "St. Leslie, who did it all herself." I didn't say that, but I did earn what I have, and I've shared it generously. All I'm asking for now is honesty and respect. "If you're going to be so rigid about money," my mother said, "maybe we should take a break from each other for a while." The words hurt, but not as much as I'd expected. Perhaps because I was finally seeing clearly. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "To end our relationship unless I continue to provide financial support without question?" Amy, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "Leslie's right. What we did with the reunion was wrong, and we have taken advantage of her financially." I felt a surge of hope at Amy's words. Maybe one relationship could be salvaged. But then Amy continued. "But Leslie, you have to admit you're cold about money. Always calculating, always planning. It makes people uncomfortable." And just like that, the brief alliance was broken. Amy wasn't agreeing with me. She was offering a bargain. She'd admit some fault if I'd admit to being cold about money. As if being financially responsible was a character flaw. "Here's my decision," I said, gathering my courage. "I'm not giving any more money to anyone in this family without formal agreements. And I need you all to acknowledge that excluding me from the reunion while using my money to fund it was wrong." Or what? Brian challenged. Or we don't have a relationship going forward, I said, the words painful but necessary. I won't be used anymore. My mother stood up, her face flushed with anger. After everything this family has done for you, you'd cut us off over money? This isn't about money, I said. It's about respect, about honesty, about real family bonds. Real family doesn't keep score, my mother insisted. Real family doesn't exclude members from reunions, I countered. We were at an impasse. My mother and Brian clearly believed I would back down eventually, that I needed their approval too much to enforce boundaries. As we argued in circles, my phone rang. I glanced at it, intending to ignore the call, but the name made me pause. Uncle Frank, my father's brother, who had always been kind to me, but who I rarely spoke with. Excuse me, I said, stepping into the kitchen to take the call. Leslie, Uncle Frank's gruff voice came through the line. I've been thinking about you since the reunion. Didn't feel right, you not being there. You were at the reunion? I asked, surprised. Uncle Frank lived in Arizona and rarely traveled. For a bit. Left early when I realized you weren't coming. Didn't sit right with me. Something in his tone made me ask. Did you know I wasn't invited? A heavy sigh. Not until I got there. Brian said you were too busy with your fancy job to bother with family. But then I overheard him later, bragging to some cousins about how he'd used your investment to fund the whole thing. Didn't add up. My heart clenched. It wasn't an investment. It was a loan for his business. I figured as much, Uncle Frank said. Listen, I recorded some of what he said. Thought you might need it someday. Brian's always been too much like his mother, manipulative as hell. Your father would be ashamed of how they're treating you. You recorded him? On my phone. Not the whole conversation, but enough. I'll email it to you. And Leslie, your father was proud of you. Don't let them make you forget that. After we hung up, I returned to the dining room with new resolve. The conversation had devolved in my absence, with Brian and my mother complaining about my attitude, while Amy sat silently. I think we're done here, I said. You've made your position clear, and I've made mine. I won't be providing any more financial support without formal agreements. You'll change your mind, Brian said confidently. You always do. Family is too important to you. Yes, it is, I agreed. That's why this hurts so much. As I gathered my things to leave, my email pinged. Uncle Frank had sent the recording. I didn't play it then, but knowing it existed gave me strength. At the door, my mother tried one last manipulation. If you walk out now, don't expect to be welcomed back easily. Family loyalty goes both ways. I looked at her, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time. Yes, it does. That's exactly the point. As I drove away, I felt both broken and strangely free. The family I had thought I had was an illusion. But maybe now I could build something real, either with them on new terms or without them entirely. My phone buzzed with a text from Taylor. How did it go? They chose money over reconciliation, I replied. But so did I, in a way. No, Taylor texted back immediately. You chose self-respect. Big difference. She was right, and that made all the difference. The week after the confrontation was one of the lowest points of my life. I had officially taken a leave of absence from work, but without the distraction of my job, I fell into a deep depression. I spent days in my pajamas, blinds drawn, replaying years of family interactions in my mind and wondering how I had missed the signs. Taylor came by daily, sometimes just sitting with me in silence, other times gently urging me to eat or shower. On Friday, she arrived with reinforcements, our college friends Stephanie and Marcus. Intervention time, Taylor announced, opening my blinds despite my protests. You've had your wallowing period. Now, we rebuild. Stephanie, a therapist herself, spoke gently but firmly. Leslie, what your family did was emotional abuse. Using you financially while excluding you emotionally is a classic toxic dynamic. But you get to decide what happens next. How? I asked, my voice hoarse from days of crying. They're my family. I can't just replace them. Maybe not, Marcus said. But you can build a family of choice alongside your family of origin, and you can establish boundaries that protect you. The three of them stayed the entire weekend, helping me clean my apartment, making me eat regular meals, and most importantly, listening as I processed my grief and anger. By Sunday night, I had showered, changed into real clothes, and even laughed a few times at Marcus's terrible jokes. First thing tomorrow, Taylor instructed as they were leaving, you call Dr. Wilson. I've already booked you an appointment. She specializes in family trauma. I agreed, recognizing that I needed professional help to navigate this situation. Dr. Wilson, a calm woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, became my anchor over the next few weeks. She helped me understand the family dynamics that had led to this situation. Your family cast you in the role of provider without your consent, she explained during one session. And when we try to step out of the roles our families assign us, there's often pushback. Your setting boundaries threatens the system they've established. But why exclude me from family events? Why lie about me to relatives? Control, Dr. Wilson said simply. By portraying you as cold, selfish, or judgmental, they justify their behavior and maintain the dynamic that benefits them. With her guidance, I began to recognize patterns I'd been blind to before. How my mother had always emphasized my responsibility while coddling my siblings. How Brian had systematically isolated me from extended family with subtle comments about my supposed condescension. How Amy oscillated between seeking my help and resenting me for providing it. During this time, I also met with a lawyer friend, Caroline, who specialized in family law. These loans you've been giving your family, Caroline said, reviewing my documents. They're legally murky without proper documentation. But going forward, we can create proper loan agreements that protect you. Is it worth pursuing repayment of the existing loans? I asked. Caroline sighed. Legally, we could try, but family financial disputes get ugly fast. My recommendation would be to write off what's already gone and start fresh with clear agreements for any future support. It was sound advice. The money was important, but not as important as my mental health and establishing healthy patterns going forward. As November turned to December, I gradually began emerging from my isolation. I returned to work, where Jack welcomed me back with understanding and a new client portfolio that challenged me in positive ways. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away over the years, partly, I now recognized, because my family had subtly discouraged these relationships. They don't understand our family dynamic, my mother would say when I mentioned bringing friends to family events. One evening, I received a call from Jennifer, my cousin from my mother's side of the family. I left the family group chat, she said without preamble. After what they did to you at the reunion, I couldn't be part of it anymore. I was touched by her solidarity, but also curious. How did you find out what really happened? Uncle Frank reached out to several of us with the truth. Then, I confronted Brian directly, and his response told me everything I needed to know. He basically said you deserved it for being stingy with your money. When I pointed out that he'd used your loan to fund the reunion, he blocked me. We talked for over an hour, Jennifer sharing what she knew about family dynamics I'd been excluded from. The most alarming revelation came near the end of our conversation. They're planning to ask you for a big loan at your mom's birthday dinner next month, Jennifer warned. Brian's pitching some new business venture. They've all suddenly decided to invite you, thinking you'll have cooled off by then. How big a loan? I asked, already knowing I would refuse but curious about the audacity. $25,000, from what I heard. For some fitness app Brian wants to develop. They figure you'll say yes at the birthday dinner because you won't want to make a scene. They were right about one thing. I wouldn't want to make a scene. But that didn't mean I would say yes. Thanks for telling me, I said sincerely. It helps to have allies in the family. We're building a bit of a rebel alliance, Jennifer said with a laugh. Those of us who see through the manipulation. You're not alone, Leslie. After hanging up, I sat thinking about what Jennifer had said. I wasn't alone. I had friends who loved me, colleagues who respected me, and even family members who saw the truth and stood by me. For the first time since the holiday party revelation, I felt something like hope. Not for reconciliation on the old terms, but for building something new and healthier, with or without my immediate family's participation. I called Dr. Wilson and scheduled an extra session. It was time to prepare for my mother's birthday dinner and the manipulation that would surely come with it. This time, I wouldn't be caught off guard. "What do you want from this dinner?" Dr. Wilson asked when we met. "I want to maintain my boundaries without destroying any chance of a relationship," I said after careful thought. "Then we need to prepare you with scripts and strategies," she said. "And you need to be very clear about your non-negotiables." Over the next 2 weeks, Dr. Wilson helped me develop a clear plan. I would attend the dinner with preparation and support. I would remain calm but firm, and I would bring documentation for any financial discussions that might arise. Meanwhile, I worked with Caroline to draft simple, clear loan agreements that I could present if, as expected, Brian asked for money for his new venture. "These protect both parties," Caroline explained. "They're not punitive, just professional." I also prepared an alternative. Instead of a loan, I would offer to invest in Brian's business legitimately, with proper equity and oversight. If his idea was truly viable, this would actually benefit him more in the long run. If it wasn't, well, that would reveal his true intentions. As the date of my mother's birthday dinner approached, I felt nervous, but resolved. This would be a turning point, one way or another. I had built a support system, with Taylor on standby for a debrief after the dinner, Dr. Wilson's strategies fresh in my mind, and Caroline's documents in my bag. I was as prepared as I could be. But family has a way of surprising you, for better or worse, and I knew this confrontation would test everything I had learned about standing up for myself while keeping the door open for healthier relationships in the future. Whatever happened, I wouldn't be the same person who had stood in my mother's kitchen just a month earlier, blindsided by betrayal and unsure of my worth. That Leslie was gone. In her place was someone stronger, clearer about her boundaries, and surrounded by people who truly valued her. That would have to be enough. My mother's birthday dinner was set for 7 o'clock at Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant that was far more expensive than our usual family gatherings. I arrived 15 minutes early, wanting to center myself before the inevitable confrontation. The hostess led me to a private dining room in the back. "The rest of your party hasn't arrived yet," she said with a smile. "Can I get you something to drink while you wait?" I ordered a glass of Cabernet, needing something to steady my nerves. As I sipped the wine, I reviewed my mental checklist. The loan documentation was in my purse. I had rehearsed my responses to predictable manipulations. Taylor was on standby for moral support, just a text away. My phone buzzed with a message from Jack. "Remember your worth. Don't let them define you." His support meant more than he knew. Over the past weeks, Jack had become not just a mentor but a friend, sharing his own experiences with family boundaries and checking in on me regularly. At 7 sharp, my family arrived all at once, as if they had coordinated their entrance. My mother, looking elegant in a new dress. Brian, unusually polished in a suit that still had the tag mark visible on the sleeve. Amy and her husband Steve, both looking uncomfortable. "Leslie, darling," my mother said, air-kissing my cheek. "We've missed you." The casual warmth, as if nothing had happened, was exactly what Dr. Wilson had prepared me for. Love bombing, she had called it. An attempt to disarm me before the ask. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, handing her a small gift bag containing a book by her favorite author. Thoughtful, but not expensive. Another boundary clearly set. Throughout the appetizers, the conversation remained superficial. The weather, a neighbor's new car, Amy's oldest child's science fair project. No mention of the reunion, the confrontation at my mother's house, or the weeks of silence that had followed. It wasn't until the main courses arrived that Brian cleared his throat dramatically. "So, Leslie, I've been wanting to talk to you about an exciting business opportunity," he began, his tone shifting into what I recognized as his pitch voice. "I've been developing a fitness app that has huge potential. It targets an untapped market segment." I nodded politely, waiting for the ask. "I've already got developer interest and preliminary market research," Brian continued, "but I need some startup capital to really make it happen. I was hoping you might consider an investment. Say, 25,000? As family, you'd obviously get preferential returns." There it was. Just as Jennifer had warned, down to the exact amount. My mother jumped in before I could respond. "Brian has really done his homework on this one, Leslie. It's not like his other ventures. This could be enormous." I took a sip of wine, buying myself a moment. "Tell me more about the app, Brian. What makes it different from the thousands of fitness apps already available?" Brian looked slightly thrown by the question. He had clearly expected either immediate agreement or immediate refusal, not genuine inquiry. "Well, it's targeted at busy professionals," he fumbled. "People who want efficient workouts without a lot of time commitment." "That's a crowded market," I observed neutrally. "Who's your development team?" "I have a guy," Brian said vaguely, "from my networking group. He's really talented." "And your market research? Can I see the data?" Brian's expression hardened. "I didn't bring all that to Mom's birthday dinner. Look, are you interested or not? Because I have other potential investors if you're going to be difficult about this." "I'm actually very interested," I said, surprising everyone at the table, including myself a little. "But I'd like to make a counterproposal." I reached into my purse and pulled out the documents Caroline had helped me prepare. "Instead of a loan, I'd like to offer a proper investment. $25,000 in exchange for 20% equity in the company, plus a seat on the board of directors, which would allow me to contribute my financial expertise to help ensure the company's success." The silence that followed was deafening. "You want to own part of my company?" Brian finally asked, incredulous. "I want to invest properly, with appropriate safeguards and potential for returns," I corrected. "It's actually a better deal for you long term. If the app is as successful as you believe, my 20% could be worth far more than a loan repayment." "This feels very cold," my mother interjected right on cue. "We're family, Leslie." "Yes, we are," I agreed. "Which is why I want any financial arrangement between us to be clear and professional, to protect our personal relationship. Or," I continued, pulling out a different set of papers, "if you prefer a straight loan, I've prepared a proper loan agreement. $25,000 at 3% interest, well below market rate, with a 5-year repayment plan." Brian's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "You actually brought contracts to Mom's birthday dinner? You actually planned to ask me for $25,000 at Mom's birthday dinner?" I countered evenly. "I'm simply responding appropriately." "This is exactly why we didn't invite you to the reunion," my mother hissed, dropping the facade of warmth entirely. "Everything is a business transaction to you. You've never understood what family means." The words stung, but I was prepared for them. "Family means respect," I said quietly. "It means not using people for their money while excluding them from celebrations. It means honesty." "Family means loyalty," my mother shot back. "It means helping without conditions. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become." That was the breaking point. The careful scripts I had prepared with Dr. Wilson evaporated in the face of this fundamental lie. "Dad valued integrity above all else," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "He would be appalled at how you've treated me, using me as a bank while turning the family against me with lies." Brian stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This was a mistake. You've obviously made your choice, Leslie. Money over family. I hope your precious dollars keep you warm at night." As he stormed toward the door, Amy trailing uncertainly behind him, my mother leaned across the table. "You've never truly been part of this family," she said, her voice low and venomous. "Always separate, always judging. Your father and I knew from the time you were small that you were different, cold. We tried to love you anyway." The cruelty of the words took my breath away. As my mother stood to follow Brian and Amy, I sat frozen, the carefully constructed composure I had maintained crumbling in the face of such fundamental rejection. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind me. I turned to see a woman in her 60s, elegant in a simple black dress, with striking gray eyes that seemed somehow familiar. "I don't mean to intrude," she said, but I couldn't help overhearing. "You're Leslie Williams, aren't you?" I nodded mutely, too emotionally drained to wonder how she knew my name. "I'm Eleanor Martinez. I own this restaurant." She gestured to the chair my mother had vacated. "May I?" I nodded again, and she sat down gracefully. "Your father was my cousin," she said simply. The statement was so unexpected that I could only stare at her. "Second cousin, technically," Eleanor continued. "Our grandmothers were sisters. I recognized your mother from family photos Robert showed me years ago. Then I heard your name, and I knew." "You knew my father?" I finally managed. Eleanor's expression softened. "Not as well as I would have liked. Your mother didn't approve of his mother's side of the family. Thought we weren't good enough, I suppose. But Robert and I stayed in touch over the years. He was so proud of you." "You must be mistaken," I said automatically. "My father didn't have family in this area, and he never mentioned a cousin." "Because Janet forbade it," Eleanor said gently. "But Robert would send me Christmas cards with family photos. He'd call occasionally, always talked about his brilliant, responsible daughter, how you had his mother's mind for numbers and his father's integrity." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone, opening the photo gallery to show me a much younger version of my father, arm around a younger Eleanor, both smiling widely at what looked like a baseball game. "Yankee Stadium, 1997, she said. One of the few times he managed to visit without Janet. "He told me then that if anything ever happened to him, I should look out for you. But when he died, Janet made it clear my condolences weren't welcome. I should have tried harder to reach you." I stared at the photo, a piece of my father I had never known existed. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I heard what Janet said to you, and it's a damnable lie," Eleanor said firmly. "Your father adored you, and what I just witnessed was emotional abuse, plain and simple. No parent should ever say such things to their child." The validation from this stranger, who somehow wasn't a stranger, broke something loose inside me. Tears I had been holding back spilled over. Eleanor didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward comfort. She simply passed me a napkin and waited. "I don't know what to do," I admitted when I could speak again. "They're my family, but they don't actually seem to want me, just my money." "Family is more than blood," Eleanor said. "It's who sees you clearly and loves you anyway. From what I overheard, you've been trying to buy a place in their affection for years. It doesn't work that way. So I just give up? Cut them off completely?" Eleanor considered this. "Not necessarily, but boundaries, like the ones you tried to establish tonight, are essential. And building connections with people who value you for yourself, not what you can give them, is even more important." As we talked, the restaurant had gradually emptied. Eleanor signaled to a waiter to clear the untouched meals and bring coffee. "Tell me about yourself, Leslie," she said. "I'd like to know my cousin." And somehow, in that quiet restaurant, with a woman who represented a branch of family I never knew existed, I began to feel the first stirrings of what real family connection should be, based not on obligation or financial support, but on genuine interest and shared history. As Eleanor shared stories about my father that I had never heard, a new perspective began to form. Perhaps family wasn't limited to the toxic relationships I had been fighting to preserve. Perhaps it could be something broader, healthier, built on mutual respect rather than manipulation. By the time I left the restaurant, I had Eleanor's phone number and an invitation to Sunday dinner at her home. More importantly, I had a sense of validation that my boundaries were not only reasonable but necessary, and the knowledge that my father, contrary to what my mother had claimed, would have supported me completely. As I drove home, I texted Taylor. Dinner went exactly as expected and completely differently than I imagined. Can you come over? Her response was immediate. Already on my way with ice cream and wine. Choose your weapon. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The confrontation with my immediate family had been painful, but perhaps it had been necessary to clear the way for healthier relationships, both with them if they ever chose to respect my boundaries, and with others who saw and valued me for who I truly was. Spring came early to Connecticut that year. As April sunshine filtered through my office windows, I found myself humming as I reviewed client portfolios, a sense of contentment that had once seemed unattainable now settling comfortably around me. Someone's in a good mood, Jack commented, pausing in my doorway. Good news on the Peterson account? Just finished the quarterly review. Their portfolio is up 12%, I replied, gesturing to my computer screen. But honestly, I'm just enjoying the day. Jack nodded approvingly. You've come a long way these past few months. That promotion to senior partner was well earned. The promotion had come as a surprise, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Since returning to work after dealing with my family crisis, I had thrown myself into my clients' needs with renewed focus and clarity. Without the constant drain of family financial emergencies and emotional manipulation, I found myself more creative, more energetic, and ultimately more effective. The team you're building is impressive, Jack added. Megan mentioned how helpful your mentorship has been. That was another unexpected development. Megan, once my fiercest competitor, had approached me after my promotion, asking for guidance. Instead of the rivalry I had anticipated, we had developed a collaborative relationship that benefited both of us. Thanks, Jack. For everything, I said, meaning far more than the compliment. After he left, I glanced at my calendar. Sunday dinner at Eleanor's was highlighted in green. What had started as a single meal had evolved into a weekly tradition, one I now cherished. Through Eleanor, I had connected with a side of my father's family I never knew existed. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all with stories about my father that helped me understand him, and myself, more fully. My phone buzzed with a text from Taylor. Still on for volunteering tomorrow? Taylor and I had started volunteering at a financial literacy program for young adults aging out of foster care. Using my professional skills to help others understand money management, budgeting, and investing had become one of the most rewarding parts of my week. Absolutely, I texted back, bringing the budget worksheets we developed. As I prepared to leave for the day, my office phone rang. The receptionist's voice came through the line. Leslie, there's an Amy Williams here to see you. No appointment. Should I send her away? My sister. I hadn't spoken to her since our mother's disastrous birthday dinner 4 months ago. No, it's fine, I said after a moment's hesitation. Send her up. I used the few minutes before Amy's arrival to center myself, remembering Dr. Wilson's advice about maintaining boundaries while remaining open to genuine change. When Amy entered my office, I was struck by how nervous she looked. Usually polished and confident, she seemed smaller somehow, clutching her purse with both hands. Thank you for seeing me, she said, remaining standing even after I gestured to a chair. I wasn't sure you would. We're still sisters, I said simply. Please, sit. She perched on the edge of the chair. I've been trying to work up the courage to call you for weeks. Then I realized I needed to do this in person. I waited, giving her space to continue in her own time. I'm sorry, Amy finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. For everything. For the reunion. For all the times I took your help then resented you for giving it. For not standing up for you when Mom and Brian were being cruel. The apology was so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't respond. What changed? I finally asked. Amy sighed. A lot of things. After Mom's birthday dinner, I started really thinking about how we've treated you over the years. Then Brian's app business failed before it even launched, and he tried to blame you for not funding it. And Mom. She paused. Mom's been different. Angrier. More controlling. Without you there to focus on, she turned that energy on me and the kids. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Don't be. It opened my eyes. Amy straightened slightly. I started therapy. The therapist helped me see the dysfunctional patterns in our family. How Mom always pitted us against each other. How Brian learned to manipulate from her. How I enabled it all. That couldn't have been easy to face, I said. It wasn't. Still isn't. Amy finally met my eyes directly. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever. I just needed you to know that I understand now, and I'm truly sorry. The sincerity in her voice touched something in me. Not enough to erase the hurt, but enough to crack open a door I had thought permanently closed. Thank you for telling me, I said. It means a lot. Amy nodded, then reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This isn't much, but it's a start. Inside was a check for $500 and a handwritten note. First installment on years of generosity. Thank you for everything. Love, Amy. You don't have to repay me, I began, but Amy shook her head. Yes, I do. For my own integrity. It won't be all at once, but I'm committed to this. We talked for nearly an hour after that, cautiously at first, then with growing ease. Amy told me about her therapy journey, her efforts to establish better boundaries with our mother, her renewed focus on her own family. Steve got a promotion, she said with evident pride. And I've gone back to school part-time to finish my degree. Things I would have leaned on you to help fund before. But we're doing it ourselves, and it feels good. As Amy prepared to leave, she hesitated. Brian asks about you sometimes. I think he misses you, in his way, though he'd never admit it. And Mom? I couldn't help asking. Amy's expression sobered. Mom isn't ready to acknowledge any wrongdoing. She still talks about you as if you abandoned the family. But I've stopped letting her narrative go unchallenged. I tell the kids the truth about their Aunt Leslie. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Thank you for that. At the door, Amy turned back. There's a recital next month. My oldest is playing violin. Would you consider coming? Just you, no Mom or Brian. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. After Amy left, I sat reflecting on how much had changed in 5 months. The holiday party that had revealed my family's betrayal had been deeply painful, but it had also been the catalyst for tremendous growth. My phone buzzed again. A text from Eleanor. Bringing your father's favorite pie on Sunday. Found his old recipe box. So many stories to share. I smiled, thinking of the expanding circle of connection that now enriched my life. Eleanor and her family. My growing friendship with Jack. Taylor and our other friends who had stood by me through the darkest times. The young adults I mentored in financial literacy. Even the tentative reconciliation beginning with Amy. The following Sunday, I arrived at Eleanor's charming colonial home with a bouquet of spring flowers. The house was already full of family, both related by blood and by choice. Eleanor's children and grandchildren, cousins I was still getting to know, friends who had become like family. As we gathered around the large dining table, I found myself seated beside a framed photo of my father that Eleanor had placed there. So he's with us in spirit, she had explained the first time. It had become our tradition. Before we eat, Eleanor said, raising her glass, I'd like to propose a toast to family in all its forms, to the bonds we choose to nurture and the love we choose to give. To family, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. As conversations and laughter flowed around me, I thought about the lessons of the past months. Family wasn't just defined by blood or obligation. True family was built on respect, honesty, and genuine care. It required boundaries and accountability, but also forgiveness and grace. I had lost the illusion of family I had clung to for years, but in its place, I had found something far more real and sustaining. I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by what I could provide to others, but by the authentic connections I built. I had discovered that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, but essential for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the most painful betrayals can lead to the most profound growth if we have the courage to face the truth and build something better from the ruins. As Eleanor passed me a slice of my father's favorite cherry pie, her eyes twinkling with unspoken understanding, I felt a deep sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would likely be challenges ahead as I continued to navigate relationships with my mother and Brian, but I was no longer alone, no longer unsure of my worth or my place. I had found my true family, and in doing so, I had found myself. Have you ever experienced feeling like an outsider in your own family? How did you handle it? I believe we all deserve to be valued for who we are, not what we can provide. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, comment below with your thoughts, and share with someone who might need to hear this message too. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope you find the courage to build the authentic connections you deserve in your life.